Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, and thank you for watching this in-depth ag forecast brought to you by Nutrien Ag Solutions. We're here on Monday evening, and as I just take a look at all of the different things I'm trying to keep an eye on here, I found it kind of difficult to find a place to start. And so what we're going to do is we're going to start off looking at the weekend precipitation, and then we'll kind of walk through some of the bigger picture things I've been thinking about here. First of all, over the past 72 hours, we've seen flooding rains in parts of the Northwest. We had a rain that came through here and hit right at the first cutting of hay, and as the hay laid in windrows, we're going to, of course, experience damage from that. You've probably all seen a lot of the news reports about the flooding in Yellowstone. Some of the storms that went through there, some of the heavy rain that went through that area delivered several inches of rainfall. And then across the central United States, we've seen multiple thunderstorm complexes that have produced extremely large hail. We watched all day this one system that moved through Wisconsin. It's about to set up this whole region here for a pretty sizable outbreak of severe weather tonight, but I'll get to that in a second. I would like to take this map and flip it over to a recent hail map. So this is kind of over the same time period. And what we're looking at here is maximum estimated hail size. Now, of course, your eye is drawn to the midsection of the United States. We have several large thunderstorm complexes, like, for example, the ones that came out of Wyoming into South Dakota, plus here in Nebraska, Kansas over the weekend that produced very large hail. But even some of the smaller storm complexes along these coasts, down through parts of the Mid-South, down to the Gulf Coast here, and even in my backyard right here, we saw some pretty large hail from some of these storm systems. Well, since we're talking about storms, the day has been full of watching very large thunderstorm complexes. I'm just going to take you back to sunrise. How about right there? Because we watched the storms from last night that blew up here in parts of South Dakota move their way today across parts of Minnesota, Iowa, and then really turn into a very large complex of storms that I was quite fascinated by watching. It actually took on a lot of tropical characteristics in this area. Well, since that occurred, some new storm cells have erupted, and I'm watching specifically the complex that came out of Indiana and is heading right now into this area, and then the second that is here. Meanwhile, don't forget, we have got individual pop-up clusters that are throughout the south and southeast that are quite large thunderstorms. There's a dust storm going right now in this part of Texas, as you can see, and wildfire smoke coming out of this part of Arizona. We'll keep going with this because the Storm Prediction Center has been upgrading all day long the risk area. It's now up to a moderate risk in this part of Michigan, Indiana, and Ohio. And don't forget, we have another complex of storms here that we're keeping a close eye on. Now, before I even go beyond that, we're also keeping an eye on the tropics. The National Hurricane Center upgraded this again today to now a 40% chance of some tropical cyclone development. But this is primarily going to be hugging the coast of Honduras, coming toward Nicaragua. I mean, it's going to be coming into this area, into Mexico, mostly when it's done. If we just look over the next 10 days, there's better development in the East Pacific than the system that's through here, but we have to watch out for it because ultimately that's going to feed the southwestern monsoon, which is another piece of the flow of this new summer pattern we're in that's really contributing a lot to the change in things. Since we're in the tropics, here's the next piece. There is a pretty sizable dust storm that's coming off of Africa, and it's moved across the Atlantic. It's in the Caribbean, and then as we just play this out over the next few days here, we see a lot of Saharan dust making its way to Texas, for example. More plumes of it coming into the Lesser Antilles. And we're going to give a lot of our attention here in the next probably 4 to 6 weeks to what's coming off of Africa as the hurricane season gets going. Now, we just take a step back and say, well, tell me something that's going on bigger picture. Well, let me show you some new information we have about our La Niña. So while we're still seeing the warm water here, which is going to help that hurricane season later, I'm very concerned about the position of the cooler water signatures you see here and right in through here. And I made this case last week. The warmest water compared to normal is north of Hawaii. We got cooler water just off the Pacific Northwest, the cool tongue that comes off of the Baja. And our La Niña is kind of stabilized, I think, again, at somewhere around minus 0.5 Celsius in Niña region 3.4. But it seems to be that the sensible heating from this warm tongue of water, which a year ago had already pushed up to the coast, all right, it's going to keep more ridging events here. And therefore more troughing in the west and more ridging in the midsection of the country. A story I'll come back to in just a few seconds. But this La Niña, just to show you something, it's interesting. The Tradewind Behavior, we kind of look at it in a couple of different ways, but the most common way that we've been doing it for well over a century and a half is the Southern Oscillation Index. Well, what's interesting is the Southern Oscillation Index just plummeted over the weekend. Now, it's still at a value of 14. So that's more than double the value it need to be considered base state La Nina. But while this has all occurred, we've also observed that the trade winds have actually picked back up again here. So we're seeing in the forecast stronger trades for a while, which says this is going to probably keep the MJO somewhere over in this vicinity. Maybe it's a bit too big of a drawing. Here with the reflection over there, so phase 781, I think. And this is still very much a La Nina signal, which means we haven't lost that base state La Nina in the atmosphere. To compound all of that, we did get new updates on Friday from the IRI group out of Columbia University, telling you their probability of keeping La Nina in blue on a 3-month sliding window starting in May and going here until March of next year. Just to make a point, the most dominant conditions expected are for ENSO neutral or weak La Nina, okay? The probability of developing an El Nino has been largely kept under about 8 to 10% all the way through next winter. So that's a new update. Since we're in the tropics, I do need to give you one more thing we're watching. It's right here. Deep low pressure system. There's Japan, so it's well off the coast of Japan. And what I'm thinking is about, given the position that the models have done, this might be sitting off the west coast of North America 10 days from now. Now, the whole of the Pacific jet has lost some momentum, and that's another piece of this that we're keeping an eye on. Here was the strong jet we just experienced that was at the end of May and beginning of June, and you see the lower winds, if you want the lower momentum state north and south of it, well, the whole thing is falling apart right now, and that's our jet stream level winds today. The models did a phenomenal job with this. Trough 1, 2, 3, 4, with ridges in between. No longer is it zonal and straight and fast. It has broken up into multiple pieces. And under this ridge right here, the middle part of the United States is experiencing, as of 5 o'clock today, temperatures, 107 in this part of Nebraska. And that heat is coming in. While look at the Northwest, struggling to get out of the 40s and 50s and low 60s. This pattern's highly amplified. And it is, just joking around here, but it's juiced. It's got a ton of moisture in it. This is a precipitable water map, which means that the atmosphere is capable of just popping into storms as long as there's no long or strong capping inversion sitting on top of it. We have precipitable water amounts here that are well above 2 inches coming out of the Gulf of Mexico. So we arrive at this map when it's all said and done. This is the latest update of the all hazards weather map as of 5 o'clock. And we have a number of states experiencing heat advisories, excessive heat watches and warnings that extend from Nebraska all the way to North Carolina. In the Southwest, there's red flag warnings, excessive heat watches, and wind warnings that run up here on the the front range back up into Montana. We have flood watches that are out for parts of the Northwest, and because of how cold it is on the backside, this has been here all day, National Weather Service has got this here under freeze watch and frost advisory. So the whole thing is it's a highly amplified pattern, and there's just numerous moving pieces around the world, and I'm trying to stitch them together here. But what we've done so far is made you aware of them. Where is this all going? Okay, so to get to that answer, let's go here first. I forgot. I wanted to give you some more stuff around the world. First, throughout Europe over the next 10 days, we are expecting well above average temperatures from the Iberian Peninsula through France, parts of southern Europe, and then over in parts of Ukraine and the Russian wheat belt, above average temperatures. This will be compounded by below average precipitation throughout much of that same area. So it's not just here in the U.S. we're keeping an eye on these hot and potentially dry conditions. It's also happening in Europe, and just to keep you up to date, also going on in parts of China. Now, when we think about China, just a reminder here, I know a lot of you watch my video from the primary corn and soybean belt, but just a reminder, a lot of the corn and soybeans grown here in the North China Plain and in the Manchurian Plain. Not necessarily seeing the major stresses there. It's south along the Yangtze River that we're getting our driest conditions. This is the current position of what we call the Mayu front. It's a monsoonal feature, and it's trying to move north, but very dry into this area. In India, we are seeing the advancement of the monsoon, but this is kind of a first couple of waves of it coming through here. And on the temperature side of things, let's go here to upper air temperatures, 850 anomalies. That'll give us an idea. You do see that we are expecting above average temperatures in this area over the next 5 to 10 days and possibly lasting a little bit longer. So there is going to be some regional heat stress in this area, and also some issues with missing out on some of the moisture. Okay, now as we start to stitch this together, I think we have to just take a look at the overall net position and speed change of the jet stream, because living between the tropics and the poles are those winds. So what we continue to see here is, as we play this out, the models really did well forecasting this next big ridge event. So we have the one that's going through now, and then one that comes through late this week and into the weekend. And that one's going to carry deep 90s into the northern plains, while the west is cooler. What I am interested in knowing is, do we see this, not just here at the end of June, but does it continue? I'll just take you all that to the 24th. That's an 11-day forecast. You see, unlike a year ago where we continue to see split flow in the Gulf of Alaska to Hawaii, what we've now got is the Pacific jet is no longer extended. It stops here. We then have troughs more frequently here, which is giving us a downstream ridging event. And since there doesn't seem to be any major blocking upstream, we still continue to see the pattern favoring this look. If we block this up, then it's going to get stuck for a while. But that means multiple ridges in the midsection of the country. So you think about the heat that's being experienced there, that seems to be favored. So when you see what this does to the precipitation forecast, well, we're going to get the ring of fire around the northern side of it, the ridge riders, the storm systems, they go north. We got the big one now, and I am watching carefully to see how this returns moisture to the Golden Triangle, one of the driest places compared to normal here in North America. But what we do see is that there's a large area of the country that is showing up dry. There will be isolated convection in here. It will still pop. There's moisture. It'll pop on the heat. But the jet stream winds north, that's where the frontal boundaries will be. That'll be where the best wind shear environments will be, which means these pop-up storms, they evolve. Most of them will pop up under no wind shear, rain themselves out. It'll locally produce, ½ inch to 2.5 inches of rain, but it'll be only very few of them that organize along their own outflow boundaries to produce squall lines, and that'll happen. Meanwhile, while most areas in here stay drier, we're going to have to watch this region for the development of the southwest monsoon getting going here, and that's going to be a very important factor to be keeping an eye on as well. Now, before I transition to the brand new European weeklies, which were just released, I'd like to make a point about the regions that are going to go over drier here. There are some places that have good soil moisture at this point due to some recent rains, and they're going to be able to endure much of the drier weather toward the end of June without much problem. The trouble areas are shown here in red. These are locations that have seen less than half of normal rainfall for the last couple of weeks. So just take a moment and maybe pause this and look at these regions that I think are going to be seeing some stress from the fact that if the individual storm clusters miss, we're going to be starting to see some crop stress very, very quickly here across a big section here of the United States. All right. Now, those European weeklies, this is the brand new update. This would be the 13th of June through the 13th of July. And the model has gone over aggressively drier in this region. Most of the action runs north, and it's here in the southwest monsoon. What I want to do, though, is I want to kind of grab this and take it out there a ways. Why don't we go from the 25th of June to the 25th of July? And what I was looking for there as I did that is just to see if there was a shift at all in the pattern. And the model's not finding the shift. It's not. That doesn't mean one won't occur. It doesn't mean that we couldn't get a shift in the phase of the MJO or a temporary breakdown of the Pacific jet to give us a change in the pattern where some heat returns west and some cooler weather comes into the central part of the United States. That is still very much possible. We are not locked in yet into this big ridge that we keep seeing in the midsection of the country. But the model isn't finding those breaks just yet. It's probably because it lives within the model variability, within the ensembles, and it's not just really showing up just yet, which means we probably won't be able to detect any sort of a pattern break outside of a 10-day window. That's just, to be honest with you, how this is going. It did increase the rainfall that was here across the East Coast, and that was primarily due to the placement of some sort of high pressure here, one over Bermuda. So the flow comes around like that, and it comes around like that. And so there tends to be boundaries that kind of sit here providing extra lift. Plus, we are moving toward the beginning, not the beginning, but the more active time with hurricanes. So we'll keep an eye on that as well. On the temperature side of it, that same 30-day time period, you can see here that we are favoring much above average temperatures through a broad section of the United States. What is notable here is that we are not seeing extreme heat necessarily in California or the Pacific Northwest, where for most of the last decade we had been seeing it. So that's your new long-range update. Let's now step back and cover a couple of the near-term things, and then we'll wrap this forecast video up. The complex of storms that I've been watching, a lot of us have been watching, the one that was most intriguing to me is the one that went across Wisconsin today. It actually took on some circulation, moved across the ocean, had a big supercell that went over Madison. I just think this is fascinating. Went right here. You're going to watch it form. It's that guy right there. See it? And is now moving over Lake Michigan. Now, this whole pattern as it's set up here is going to really produce, as the Storm Prediction Center says, the greatest risk of severe storms right in through this area. If you've never been to the spc.noaa.gov, go check it out. They have quick overview maps of where we're watching for severe storms. You can even see where thunderstorm watches have been issued. If you want to dig a little deeper, these are what we call the mesoscale discussions, and you have storm reports. So this will show you the latest storm reports. As we're keeping an eye on this too, I just want to point out there's another tab for fire risk. And you saw the red flag warnings that were over here. But what I'm watching specifically is this region in through here. And if we just go to some high-res modeling, this was just released a while ago, the 18Z NAM. I'm going to start you here before I come to the bigger feature. We see that through this afternoon and this evening, there's two things I'm kind of rocking back and forth on. There's a complex of storms north and the complex that was through Indiana today, dumping heavy rain and producing a lot of lightning. The models are attempting to take that line of storms and push it right over this part of Kentucky and Ohio into West Virginia. And then late tonight, develop this could be large squall line that comes off of Lake Michigan. I do not think that the models are properly initialized with this. We're going to have to wait and see. The storms right now don't line up well with the initialization, and they're suggesting that there's redevelopment on the backside. But that then pushes over to the mid-Atlantic. See that? That's overnight tonight into tomorrow morning. And we're going to watch this area tomorrow for some severe weather. I'll show you that in a second. Meanwhile, give me your attention back over here. This is where the deep low is curling up out of Alberta into Saskatchewan and throwing some rain into Manitoba. We're going to watch the southern edge of this front tomorrow for the chance for some strong to severe storms. And as you can see, possibly rain coming back to the Golden Triangle, a place we've been watching very carefully. So that's through Tuesday. We're going to watch in through here for severe storms Tuesday night into Wednesday morning. And guess where they hit? That same area that's been hit several times. So there's tomorrow's convective outlook. And then this gets into day 3, which would be the 15th. Now from this point forward, I'd like to show you two maps. The first one is a 7-day precipitation anomaly map from the European model, 12Z run today. And this is the GFS. To be honest, the models are in pretty good agreement on the overall pattern, but let's take a look at the comparison between the two to see some of the differences. All right, we've already walked through the development of the deep low going through parts of Saskatchewan. Both models have it. They also have the same timing on the front, bringing in the severe risk here. As we play this forward into Wednesday night and then eventually through Thursday morning, Thursday midday, Thursday afternoon, the front sweeps through the eastern part of the United States, so we're going to watch for the potential for strong storms there. Now after this, our second ridge builds in. This is the one that comes in on Friday and on Saturday. And so the models aren't going to show anything in here because they're not going to be able to resolve the individual thunderstorm clusters. But there is a large ridge of high pressure in the upper levels of the atmosphere sitting here. I'll show you the temperatures in a few moments. What they do end up doing is delivering more moisture to the west as we go into the weekend and through it. And it's in both models. But if you're looking at this going, I just don't see a lot of well-defined features. It's because when the jet stream retreats so far to the north, frontal boundaries become very weak and almost non-existent here. When they do form, they're often due to the outflow or the decay of old thunderstorm complexes, which aren't even resolved by the GFS or the ECMWF. So the net effect here is that these models, their performance really goes down a lot in summer because we switch over to convection rather than precipitation coming on large frontal boundaries. But it's the pattern that's going to give us a clue. And that's why when you get all the way out there to day 10, you see this low sitting right here. That upper level trough is this 10 days from now. So the flow, as you can see, is still doing something like that. And as we play this out, we just don't see the models breaking that down too much. And if we see that consistent pattern, then this is why we see the week 2 favoring the active monsoon wetter through the Canadian prairie where the ridge runners go, and overall a drier forecast for this area just because of the limited amount of interaction with these storm systems in the jet stream. There's no fronts. So you just tend to get scattered, isolated convection. And the model doesn't resolve it very well, so that's why you see the drier risks. We will watch daily for the development of thunderstorms, and that's where we'll be. Now, before I show you these temperatures, take a look at this graphic. This is from NRCS, and you're looking here at percent of normal snow water equivalent. Now, if there's one thing about this that I haven't seen in a long time, is that we have carried snowpack deep into June. And some of these numbers, if I just kind of zoom in here, you can see we're in 150 to 550% of normal in some of the mountains in the west. And as we just kind of look out there, just to let you know something, we got more snow coming to the northern Rockies and throughout pretty high elevation, but in the Cascades with the next deep trough that's coming through. That's because today's high temperatures compared to normal look like this, where we were expecting almost 110 degrees in the midsection of the country, where that's getting up there almost 30 degrees above average. The Pacific Northwest was 15 to 20 degrees cooler than normal. So this is ridge number 1 on Monday into Tuesday, spreading east. That's the temperatures on Wednesday this week, getting into Thursday, but here's the rebuilding of the next ridge. So that one takes hold on Thursday into Friday. Big swing in temperatures in the Northwest this week. There's Saturday, carrying those 90s deep into the northern plains, and they sit there on Sunday. So that's what happens when this pattern opens up into these large ridges. And if we look out there beyond that, and here's the last suite of maps I'm going to show you today. Here's the next 5 days in terms of temperature anomalies. You see that as we work our way out there to day 5 through 10, that's when we have the troughs anchoring both corners of the U.S., the Northwest and the Northeast. The central United States just keeps its warm temperatures around. There will be days where we don't see such extreme heat, but overall it's favoring above average temperatures in the midsection of the country, with cooler in the Northwest especially, getting us all the way out there almost to the last day of June. So you now know what I'm watching this week, and there's a lot of moving pieces, as we often say. I imagine a lot of my fellow meteorologists are feeling the same way, but we need to see how they all interact ultimately with the position and strength of this jet stream, because I think that's what's going to determine things across North America. So I'll wrap it up there, and thanks.